Hey, welcome back. Monday morning. I just got done with a bike ride. Uh, love my bicycle. Anyway, I hope you guys are getting out and taking a walk, staying away from people because people are, for the most part, we need them, but they're disgusting. Let's face it. Anyway, I had my coffee at Starbucks. I sit outside in the parking lot. They allow me to do that. Read the newspaper, New York Times. Always stuff that's interesting in there. It's all about the virus now, so it's not as interesting as it used to be. But at least it keeps me in touch with the outside world. And in the culture, there's a lot of culture going on in the outside world, not so much in Reading. Anyway, I am working all sorts of stuff at home. Just thought I'd tell you that. I had done a one man solo show where I write these monologues, I do music, and I perform them live. Well, that got all canceled. And so I'm going to make a movie of it instead. I'll film it. That's what we do now. Everything's going to be on YouTube. And so if anybody has any ideas or wants to help or something from your homes, come on and join me. Anyway, everything's television now. I used to say everything's cinema, but now everything is essentially television. I mean, watching our screens like crazy, not just for our usual relationships with people. We're literally having our classes online and we're Zooming each other. And that's the new world order right now to stay healthy in this crazy pandemic we're going through. Anyway, I hope you guys are all hanging in there and doing all right. Don't spend your checks because they won't go that far. You know the checks I'm talking about? Hopefully you get those. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about television. That's what we do in this class. TV time. And it's more relevant than ever before. Now it's not a time killer or entertainment. Now it's almost a lifeline. That's how we're communicating now, is through screens, whether it's on your cell phone, iPhone, computer, the big screen, the little screen, doesn't matter. It's screen time in America. And that is equals television. But I want to talk about a real important aspect of television. Hold on. Pardon me. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about documentaries today, TV, and how they have changed the landscape of how we look at documentaries. Maybe you watch them, maybe you don't. What is a documentary? That's the question. It's changed over the years. They used to be kind of boring, academic, nonfiction films on all sorts of things, from historical events to, the planet Earth. If you ever saw the documentary Blue Earth, it's fantastic. It's about the oceans and how we're slowly killing everything in the ocean. Anyway, but documentaries have been on TV for a long time. They used to be on PBS, the Public Broadcasting Network, because it was considered educational. But now, when people like Ken Burns, who has done so many documentaries on PBS, from the Civil War to baseball to jazz to country and Western music, he's changed the landscape on how we look at these documentaries. They're not academic anymore. They're not just boring things you have to suffer through, like reading boring old history books. It shows a lively history, and it makes history come alive, and you can relate to it because you can see what we're like, what we are like, and how it all connects us from our past to now. And that's the key about documentaries. But before I go any further on the documentaries, I want to talk about the next, what to expect in this class as we go along. Hopefully, we're all hanging in there and you're not dropping the class this stage in the game. We've got about another 7 weeks and then we're done. So please hang in there. The syllabus has changed. It's all in flux. And so I'm changing some stuff. And what's going to happen now, we're going to have 3 more assignments due. That's it. The assignment I assigned today, which is an essay, just like you've been doing. Then I'm going to assign a research paper. It's going to be worth 20 points. And it's what you're going to finish out the semester with. And I'm going to allow you to choose the subject, as long as it has something to do with television. It could be the history. It could be any aspect we've covered, anything from the textbook. It could be anything. There's lots I haven't covered. I'm still working on it. We're going to cover as much as we can. It could be a favorite series of yours, or not favorite series of yours. It could be almost on any topic, as long as it has something to do with television. But here's the catch. It's going to be a research paper. It's not going to be like the essays we've been doing. It's meaning you're going to have to do some research on this topic, and you'll have to possibly have quote sources to make it reliable. And it's not just based on your opinion or your likes or dislikes. You're actually researching it. Who directed it? Who wrote it? What are the scripts like? How does it work into the culture? And that's always key to this class. How does these TV series connect to the culture? What's going on in the culture and how we're connecting it to television? That's really key to what I'm trying to get through in this course. And so you'll be able to write whatever you want, as long as you run it by me first. Run your topics by me, either text me or email me. You know how to get a hold of me, and run your topic by me. And please just don't say, I just love Friends and I want to write about Friends. Well, I'd rather you write about something maybe you're not that familiar with, something that maybe will get you beyond just your like factor. And if you write about something like Friends, tell me, don't just have your research paper be a love letter to Friends. I need to see the research. Research it. Figure out how it came about, what it's about. Do you think it's realistic? I mean, I wasn't a big Friends fan. I wasn't. But if you really look at it, they all live in really big apartments in New York City, really, and they all have marginal jobs at coffee shops. How'd they pay for it? Well, it's a Hollywood construct of very white people, privileged people living in hipster Manhattan. Was it possible? Was it realistic? Does it need to be realistic? Was it just there for entertainment? Did we learn anything about it? Was there actually something real going on in it, or was it just simply a fantasy? Okay, write about it in a serious way like that, and I'll let you do it. You might have another series you want to write about, or you might want to write about a genre. You want to write about the histories of Westerns in television. That's a great topic. We haven't covered that much in Westerns. It was huge. Westerns of the 50s and 60s. I mean, at one time in America, there was 50, 60 television shows on about Westerns on TV. That all stopped in the 70s when kind of the culture was changing. The kids were growing up. We were fighting Vietnam War. We had Richard Nixon in the White House. And we kind of got away from the nostalgia and the safety of Westerns. And so they kind of fell out of favor. Now they've kind of made a comeback in some television shows, a few. And of course, they've modernized them now. And movies also. So there's been modern Westerns, that have been valid. Do they get the period right? Does it look real? Is it another Hollywood fantasy of what Hollywood thinks Westerns are, which is cool outfits, cool gunfights. The women have makeup and they have current hairdos and they're sexy and hot with fake eyelashes. Yes, fake eyelashes. Look at Westerns on TV. That's when nobody looked like that. Nobody looks hip and cool in the Old West. Really, they don't. That's a Hollywood construct. Nobody wore leather pants and had um, the high fashions of westerns. So it was a pretty sloppy period. But there's a great series you want to write about. Deadwood is a great contemporary western. Fantastic work of genius. Um, we'll talk about westerns next time. Okay, that's a great genre. But today I'm going to talk about documentaries a bit, and kind of the major documentary maker of uh, television would be obviously Ken Burns. Maybe you've seen these documentaries. Maybe the word documentary turns you off because you think it's going to be boring. It's not going to be exciting. But the contemporary documentaries are anything but that. They make them as exciting as fiction films. I mean, here's a good example of a documentary. Tiger King, folks, is a documentary. How many of you watched it? There you go. How many of you watched it? That's a documentary. It's a lowbrow freak show of the highest caliber about the man keeping tigers in his backyard. And we're not saying half the truth, by the way. We're not saying, for example, when he's holding up the cubs or the cute cubs of the tigers, we're the mothers. Do you actually realize what it takes to take cubs away from a mother tiger? It's impossible. Well, where are the mothers? I hate to say it, folks, but they're drugging them and they're separating them from their cute kittens so people could pose with these cats. Where are the mothers of these cats? They're breeding them just so you can have cute photo op and you can make money. So if anybody wants to watch a Tiger King and write about it, please do. That'll be part of one of the assignments, maybe. But there's been some other that's a phenomenon. Maybe it's because we're all confined to our TVs right now. That became the huge hit of the documentary series. Is it a documentary? Meaning, are they telling the truth or are they editing it in such a way they're dramatizing it? Yes, they're doing all that. And so can you trust documentary as being purely factual? No, you can't. They're trying to make it as entertaining as possible, especially something like the Tiger King. Whereas Ken Burns is highly researched, he tries to give you an authentic, truthful depiction of a historical era of our country, whether it's the beginning of baseball to the beginning of jazz music, country and Western music, the Civil War, the whole bit. And so that's the difference in the documentaries. Is he trying to entertain and enlighten? Absolutely. He wants to keep viewers coming in, and he knows how to do that. Another great series recently, maybe you've seen it, you can watch it. It's on Netflix, I think, and maybe some other outlets. It's called Five Came Back. Steve Spielberg and Tom Hanks' company produced it, and it's about five movie directors who, during World War II, put their careers on hold and went to help the war effort. These directors who were famous at the time, some not as famous, but there was people like John Ford, who had won the Academy Award, and Frank Capra, who had won the Academy Award, William Wyler, who will win Academy Awards later, and then there's John Huston, and the fifth one is George Stevens, and John Huston would go on to direct and write things like The Maltese Falcon and many of my favorite movies of the 50s and 60s. Also, William Wyler went on to direct, besides Mrs. Miniver, great epic post-World War II film called Best Years of Our Lives. These guys gave up their careers. They put them on hold and they joined the military. They weren't young kids. They're not going to go pick up a gun. They're too old for that. John Ford was in his 60s at the time. but he wanted to do something for the war effort. So they gave them ranks, and they put them in uniforms, and they paid them the usual $110 a month or whatever it was. They went from these big careers in Hollywood to essentially a subsistence pay in the military. They left their families in Hollywood, yes, in their mansions, and they went to live in Europe and Asia to help the war effort. And they made films. If you watch the film, I hope you do. I hope you do, because it's really enlightening. But these guys went to the war zones and they filmed the war. Maybe you've seen Saving Private Ryan. Those D-Day invasion, the real footage, were filmed by these filmmakers. A lot of them, a lot of those cameramen, for example, in the D-Day invasion, were killed and on the invasion. That's why we don't have a lot of footage of it, because their cameras went into the water with their dead bodies. But and then people like John Ford were filming what was going on in the Pacific. He filmed the Battle of Midway, and he was wounded during that. And he got a Purple Heart from it when shrapnel from a plane that was being strafed by Japanese across the way. He was filming it with his crew, blew up, and the shrapnel blew on them. And so this is real life and death stuff. George Stevens was one of the few first documentary filmmakers who filmed one of the very first concentration camps that we discovered. We had heard about them, we knew about them, but we didn't actually see one until we freed a couple of them, the American forces, British forces, and he filmed it. And it's devastating. The truth of some of these concentration camps was devastating, and he filmed it. Now, what was happening, they were working essentially for the U.S. government, and some of these films are considered too risky to show American people, because we don't like to see carnage like this. And so a lot of these films were actually hidden. They weren't allowed for the people, us, to see them, because they weren't propaganda, how great the film is. They showed the horror of film. They showed dead bodies. If you notice that in any American movie at the time that was being made, you never really saw American dead bodies. We showed the enemy. Well, these guys were filming the dead on both sides, and it was suppressed by the Pentagon for many years. This footage didn't come out because the Pentagon felt that the American people doesn't want to see Americans laying dead on the beach. It'd be too much. Now, maybe if we did see that and they trusted us, maybe we would see the horrors of war more, instead of being propaganda for the war, like, say, a John Wayne movie. I'm not putting John Wayne down. He did some great films in the 40s that helped the war effort a lot, money-wise. But they put a American happy face on everything, and it wasn't true. It's not showing the truth. John Wayne sold a lot of war bonds, which is what they had to sell and to people in order to get the war machine going. War bonds was like an extra thing you could volunteer to pay. It wasn't a tax. You bought war bonds, and that helped build tanks and armaments and put people to work on building the war machine here. And then we went and took it to Germany and Japan. We took it back to them. And so this documentary shows all that. It shows that these 5 guys who were established Hollywood filmmakers went to these war zones to film the war. And they volunteered, folks. They weren't drafted. They're too old for that. And I always, when I lecture about this film in my classes, I always try to compare it to what's going on now. Would a movie star, say of Keanu Reeves, he's too old now, but say a young movie star, would they give up their careers to actually join the military and go fight in Afghanistan? Hasn't happened yet. There was when very first 9/11 hit, the military swelled, and we were going to go to war in the Mideast. A lot of people joined up, and one of them was a football player named Pat Tillman, and he had just signed a $3 million a year contract. And folks, he walked away from it all and joined the military because he felt that he wanted to fight for his country, wanted to fight terrorism. He felt that strongly about it. He walked away from a $1 million career. And guess what, folks? He was killed. And maybe you've heard about it. There's a great documentary called The Pat Tillman Story. Watch it. Because what happened, the story, it was used as a propaganda tool for the U.S. government, George Bush's administration. They said Pat Tillman died a hero. Well, that story went out, so people started believing in the buildup for the war in the Mideast. And well, it turned out to be not true, folks. He was killed by friendly fire, meaning his own guys accidentally killed him. He was not a hero. He died a tragic death, like a lot of people who die in these wars. They're killed by their own guys accidentally. And so the documentary escaped because it shows the truth. And the Bush administration didn't want to show the truth. They wanted to use his death as a propaganda tool to say, isn't this war great? We're doing the right thing. And he was a hero. And so even his parents were told by Washington and the Pentagon that he died a hero. Well, when they found out the truth of the matter, they felt betrayed. They felt their own government had betrayed them and used them, and they turned against the very system that the son went to fight for, because the system used and abused him. It's a really, really poignant, meaningful documentary called The Pat Tillman Story. Find it. It's out there. It's on all sorts of streaming services, and you can see clips from it on YouTube. I don't know if you can see the whole thing, though. I'm not sure. But 5 came back. I do believe it is on Netflix. It's like a 6-part series, and it shows these directors going off to war. And they're all middle-aged guys. Anyway, so documentaries are powerful tool that television can provide. And now there is a platform for it because there's a lot going on in the world, obviously. And there's also these platforms like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, so you can get your film screened. Because up until then, TV didn't screen a lot of this stuff except for on PBS. And people had to turn to that, and you would see films, documentaries on nature and things like that. But were more considered academic studies, not exposés, political exposés. And so the documentaries can be a very, very powerful tool. Now, the question people ask, I want to ask a question in class. I can't ask it now because I'm not in the class. I would say, what do you think a documentary is? Try to explain it to me. Explain it to the class. Explain it to yourself. And so many people go, well, it's a truthful event that happened. And okay, well, really? Okay. But is it really the truth? Is it a subject that happened? That's truthful. But are the filmmakers actually depicting the truth? That's the hard, tricky part. Because you could, as a filmmaker, you manipulate the story constantly. When you decide to film a camera a certain way, you're manipulating the audience's point of view. You're manipulating their impressions of what you want them to see. When you interview somebody and you ask a question of them, You're manipulating that by the question. Some of these documentaries don't have interviews. They just rely on the visual storytelling. Let the story tell the story. Some are lots of talking heads interviews. Those can get boring after a while. And so they'll have people, when I mean that, there's an interview with a talking head. And they ask these, whoever they are, experts or people who are actually were exposed and during World War II. They actually lived through something. And so we want to hear their stories. Well, and if there's music involved, the filmmakers decided to put certain music in certain areas to manipulate our feelings. This is how it is. So there's all sorts of editing, tricky editing you could do to manipulate the story. If the truth of a documentary is you think it's the truth, it's been manipulated by the filmmaker. Now, does that mean it's a lie? No. It means he's possibly, or she is, or they are manipulating the story to tell it in a powerful, entertaining way. But it does have a point of view, usually. There's very few documentaries that are completely no point of view. It's virtually impossible. So, documentaries are, I would say, as entertaining as any fiction film. Great documentary filmmaker, Werner Herzog. If you saw Grizzly Man, you know what I'm talking about. Another great early documentary I wish you guys would seek out. It's called The Up Series. It's a British series that started in 1964. I mentioned it in the last lecture. And it started with filming children in 1964 at age 7. And they were, and every 7 years, they have filmed them ever since. I think they're 63 years old right now. And there's a new one just came out this year. Some of them have died. Some won't be a part of it. And you get to see these kids literally grow from 7 to 63. And it's fascinating as hell because it's life. It's a whole lifetime. The Michael Apt, who's the filmmaker, he's well into his 80s now. He says, I'll keep filming these until I'm dead. Who knows if he can make another 7 years, because I think he's 83 or 87 now. So he's not a young man anymore. So he might not be around in 7 years to film it again. Maybe someone will take over. But it's a fascinating series on people aging in our 20th century and 21st century culture. They've have some examples of it. There's a ton of examples on them on YouTube. You'll see it. They've cut it down some. I think there's a documentary that cuts all the documentaries down to 2 hours. You can watch that. Anyway, I hope you watch some of this stuff. Find it, seek it out. You won't regret it. And there's a brilliant aspect of the 7-Up series where they asked a simple question. They asked these young children at 7 what it is they dream about, what they think they're going to be. And if you think about it, maybe some of you have kids and you've asked the same questions. The theory is, give me the child at 5 and I'll give you the adult. And that sounds ludicrous at first, but if you really start thinking about it and analyzing it and being truthful to yourself about it, ask your friends. I used to take a poll in my class when I had a class, and I'd say, can you remember when you're 6 or 7 what you wanted to do or be? And it's surprising that if people really remember, to see if it comes true or not. And I'll just give you an example. I have a friend who was always constantly building forts. He would build tree houses. He was just constantly building when he was 7 and 8 years old. And guess what, folks? He turned into a builder, lifelong builder. He's retired now, and that's what he did for a living. Give me the child at 7. musicians do this all the time. They're banging on drums when they're 7, and now they're in the Beatles. Um, Using myself example, I've always, as far as I can remember, wanted to be in movies or on television. I didn't know what that meant when I was 6 or 7, but I wanted in. Later on, I wanted to be an actor, and then I wanted to be a director and a writer, and I still do. That's never stopped. I got to make some movies or write and direct and stuff. I got to do a little of it. And so give me the child of 7. They would say I was always accused of being a dreamer. My head was always in the clouds. Okay, so what? Hopefully you're dreaming and your heads are in the clouds. Anyway, with that, I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to see you next time, which I'm going to start talking about some genres in television. One of them is the Western, which I'm going to cover next time. You can write about Westerns. And so here's what I want you to do now. I'm going to make an assignment. I'll post it later on today, or maybe tomorrow on assignments. You'll do another essay on one of these documentaries I want you to find or seek out and enjoy them and critically analyze what you see. And that is it, folks. On that note, I hope you keep your spirits up. I hope you're doing something creative. I hope you're strumming a guitar or playing a piano or dancing, or you're just not depressed sitting in the corner playing your X Games. These are dangerous times. So do something. And I'm happy to be your instructor. I hope you're getting something out of this class. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in, and look at the assignments. Okay, soon. Peace out.